I'll never forget that day. It was supposed to be one of the proudest moments of my career. The school was hosting its annual Teacher Appreciation Ceremony, where outstanding teachers were recognized for their hard work and dedication. As a teacher, these moments mean a lot. They remind us why we work so hard, despite the challenges. I had been teaching at Madison Elementary for nearly 10 years, and my students were my world. Over the years, I had poured my heart into creating a safe, welcoming classroom for all of them. I stayed late grading papers, mentoring kids who needed guidance, and even helping organize community events. My colleagues often told me how much of a difference I was making. Some even said I was an inspiration to them. So, when I received a formal invitation to the ceremony, I was thrilled. I didn't expect to win any awards, but I was excited to celebrate with my fellow teachers and share the joy of our hard work being recognized. The auditorium buzzed with excitement that evening. Parents, students, teachers, and board members filled the seats. I sat near the middle, smiling and cheering for my colleagues as their names were called. One by one, they walked up to the stage to receive their awards, each met with applause and gratitude. Then, something strange happened. My name was never called. I had overheard a couple of colleagues earlier in the week mention that my name was on the list of nominees for a special award. It was for excellence in community impact, something I cared deeply about. But as the evening went on, I realized the event was wrapping up, and my name hadn't been mentioned once. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe they had skipped a category or overlooked me in the shuffle. But as I looked at the principal, Mr. Reynolds, standing on stage, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that it wasn't a mistake. Mr. Reynolds never really acknowledged me much. Despite my contributions to the school, he rarely engaged with me beyond basic pleasantries. It was subtle, but I often felt ignored in meetings and overlooked for opportunities. I had brushed it off, thinking I was imagining things. But tonight, it felt different. As the ceremony ended, I sat frozen in my seat. Parents and teachers gathered around the awardees, congratulating them. I tried to put on a brave face, but inside, I felt humiliated. A few students ran up to me and gave me hugs, saying things like, "You're still the best, Ms. Carter." Their words meant everything, but I couldn't stop the sting of being publicly ignored. That night, I went home and cried. It wasn't just about the award. It was the feeling of being unseen, despite giving my all. The next morning, I received an unexpected call from a parent. She had been at the ceremony and noticed what had happened. "Ms. Carter," she said, "this isn't right. Everyone knows how much you do for these kids. I'm going to bring this up at the next board meeting." I didn't think much of it. People often promise to stand up for others, but nothing usually came of it. I decided to focus on my work and move on. A week later, however, everything changed. The school board held an emergency meeting to address complaints about the ceremony. Apparently, multiple parents had written letters questioning why certain teachers, especially me, hadn't been recognized. They brought up examples of my contributions, organizing charity drives, tutoring struggling students, and even funding classroom supplies out of my own pocket. The board decided to investigate. When they reviewed the award selection process, they found something troubling. Mr. Reynolds had intentionally removed my name from the list of nominees. Not only that, but emails revealed his biases against me and other teachers of color, citing that we need to focus on promoting others. The news spread like wildfire. Teachers, parents, and even students rallied behind me, sharing stories of how I had impacted their lives. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly seen. A week later, the board made their decision. Mr. Reynolds was fired. They issued a public apology to me and promised to implement better oversight to ensure fairness in the future. It was a bittersweet victory. No one should have to go through what I did to prove their worth. But if my experience sparked change, it was worth it. That experience taught me something important. When you pour kindness, love, and dedication into the world, it doesn't go unnoticed. Even if some people try to dim your light, there will always be others ready to stand up for you and make things right. And for that, I'll always be grateful. After the ordeal, I returned to school with a mix of emotions. The support from the community was overwhelming. Parents stopped by to thank me for the work I'd done with their children, and colleagues came up to share words of encouragement. Even students wrote heartfelt notes saying how much they admired me. One note, from a student named Emma, stood out the most. It read, "Dear Ms. Carter, You taught me that being kind and working hard is more important than anything else. You are my hero. Reading those words brought tears to my eyes. Moments like these reminded me why I became a teacher in the first place, to make a difference, no matter how small it might seem at the time. The school board also took significant steps to address the systemic issues that had allowed someone like Mr. Reynolds to hold such a position for so long. They introduced new policies to ensure transparency and fairness in teacher recognition, and they hired a new principal who truly valued every staff member's contribution, regardless of their background. As for me, I chose to stay at Madison Elementary. Despite the challenges, it was still my home, and my students were still my heart. But I also took something new from the experience: a determination to advocate not just for my students, but for myself and my fellow teachers. When Teacher Appreciation Day rolled around the following year, the atmosphere felt different. For the first time, it truly felt like a celebration of everyone's hard work. When my name was called to receive the Excellence in Community Impact Award, the auditorium erupted into applause. I walked to the stage, heart full and head held high, knowing that this time I wasn't invisible. That moment wasn't just about recognition, it was about justice, growth, and the power of standing up for what's right. And as I looked out at the sea of smiling faces, I realized something important. Sometimes the hardest battles pave the way for the brightest victories. After the ceremony, I was approached by students, parents, and even colleagues who shared how much the event had meant to them. Many said it felt like a new beginning, not just for me, but for the school as a whole. One parent told me, "Your resilience reminded us all that fairness and kindness should always win." I carried those words with me as I returned to my classroom the next day. My students greeted me with cheers, and on my desk, I found a handmade card signed by the entire class. It read, "To the best teacher in the world, thank you for never giving up on us. We will never give up on you." That simple message touched me deeply. It wasn't about the awards or recognition. It was about the lives I had touched and the love I had received in return. The following weeks brought more changes. The new principal made it a priority to create an inclusive, supportive environment for everyone. Staff meetings became spaces where all voices were heard, and the culture of the school shifted towards celebrating diversity and collaboration. For me, the journey was transformative. I learned to value my own efforts and to speak up when something felt wrong. The experience made me stronger and more confident, not just as a teacher, but as a person. Looking back now, I realize that night of being ignored was a turning point, not just for me, but for everyone who believed in fairness and equality. It taught us all that silence and inaction allow injustice to thrive, but courage and community can bring about real change. And every day, when I step into my classroom and see my students' eager faces, I'm reminded that the work we do, the love, patience, and commitment we give, is worth it. Because at the end of the day, making even one person feel seen, valued, and inspired is the greatest reward of all. The journey hasn't been without its challenges. There are still days when I feel the weight of the past, moments when I wonder if the world will ever truly change. But then, I think of Emma's note, of the parents who spoke up, and of the colleagues who supported me when I needed it most. The ripple effects of that one event were profound. More teachers began sharing their stories, finding courage in mine. The school started hosting workshops on equity and inclusion, ensuring that every staff member and student felt valued. It was no longer just a place where we taught lessons. It became a place where we lived them. As for me, I've made it my mission to mentor younger teachers, especially those who might feel overlooked or marginalized. I remind them to never let anyone dim their light, to stand tall, and to trust that their efforts matter. And while the award now sits on my shelf, gathering dust, the real reward is in the smiles of my students, the gratitude of their parents, and the knowledge that I made a difference, not just in their lives, but in the culture of our school. In the end, being ignored that night wasn't a defeat. It was a lesson, a catalyst for change, and a testament to the power of resilience. I may have felt invisible for a moment, but the love and support from my community, ensured that I'll never feel unseen again. For that, and for every child who walks through my classroom door, I am forever grateful.